gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Stay Word Network proudly brings you Cards Subject to Change with Hassel. This week, we got one hell of a show for you guys as we got What If Sting went to the WWF in 1998. So let's go ahead and get the elephant out of the room right now because I know somebody's going to be squatting in my comments and they're going to say, but Hassel, he would not have went to WWF because he was loyal to WCW. You're correct. He wouldn't. He didn't because he was a loyalist. But what if? That's what this show was all about. What if we had took this road instead of this road? That's the fun of this show. We get to do these sorts of things. And before you hit me with the 1B of that right there, with the, but Vince McMahon wouldn't know what to do with him. Let me go ahead and tell you something. Vince knew what to do with the Ultimate Warrior, who had a third of the athletic ability that Steve Borden had. He just had the charisma, to where Sting had the charisma, the same body, the same strength, same athletic ability, except for he could get it done in the ring as he had done learn from Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair, the Four Horsemen, etc., etc., etc. So by 1998, he was getting a perfected Ultimate Warrior, essentially. So Vince would have known what to do. Plus, he didn't have to acquire this guy. This would have been like the red badge of honor, so to speak, for Vince to have had Sting, the franchise of WCW, for all those years within the WWF. So he's going to know what to do with him, at least in our damn universe. So let's have some fun with this, people, because this is a what if. Let's have fun with this right here and not split it apart 40 different ways. With that being said, let's roll, people. So we're going to kick off right after Starrcade. So as you know, in the real reality, Sting was supposed to go over Hogan cleanly at Starrcade 97. However, the man shows up not tanned enough. Hulk felt like his head was not in it. And as a result, he told Bischoff, that don't work for me, brother. His head's not in the game. It's not the right call. So as a result, we get this smudged up, just terrible finish where it's supposed to be a fast count. It wasn't a fast count, obviously. Brett gets involved, and it's just a muddled mess. Sting goes to the back afterwards. He says, you know what? I'm tired of this shit. I'm done with it. Once my contract's coming to an end, I'm done. Well, they done nothing with him. They strip him of the title the next night. They do nothing with him. It's sold out, just like in the real reality. At Uncensored, you have the match where, it's Super Brawl. I apologize. It's Super Brawl. We do get Hogan versus Sting. They put the belt on Sting to try to appease him and say, please stay with us. Bischoff's trying to give him a little carrot and dangle around him. But Sting's telling himself, nah, I'm going to let my contract lapse. They keep the belt on Sting for just a short amount of time like they do in the real reality. He goes on to the next month, defeats Scott Hall in a pay-per-view. They had a great matchup. We still have this great matchup. But however, Sting says, if I'm going out, I want to drop the title to Macho. I want to do the right thing on my way out the door. So at Spring Stampede, just like in the real reality, he's going to still drop the title to the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Yeah! But in this reality, instead of going forth and joining the Wolfpack and making that just square peg in a round hole that made zero sense to anyone then and doesn't make any sense now, the Stinger, he's done. After Spring Stampede, he's done. WCW, I love you. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Wish you guys the best in your future endeavors. I'm not going down with your ship. Sting goes off. We don't see or hear from Sting for several months. Now, Meltzer would have a field day with the dirt sheets by, putting all the crap out there, always going back to WCW. This is a money play. He's just trying to get Sting money, etc., etc. However, at the 1998 November Survivor Series, we still get The Rock being made the corporate champion by none other than Vincent Kennedy McMahon and Shane McMahon, screwing over Mankind. However, the difference is, in this reality, as they're strapping the title around The Rock and they're running their praise and all this stuff, out of the rafters comes none other than Sting. Now, JR would lose his shit because JR has not said anything about Sting in over 8 or 9 years since leaving WCW. So you can just imagine the King out there going, oh! And then, oh, it's Sting, it's Sting. That would be gold, people. Sting would then put the Scorpion Death Drop on The Rock before staring down Vince McMahon, who then hauls ass out of town, leaving The Rock right then and there. Now, the next night on Raw, Vince McMahon would come out with his corporate champion and tell Sting, I don't know who the hell you think you are, but The Rock is the corporate champion. He is our guy. He is our guy that's going to lead the company against Steve Austin. And Sting, you can just get your ass down the road. However, that's when the Stinger's music's going to hit. Sting's going to come down. He's coming out to seek and destroy, just like he did in WCW, which I don't know. Jim Johnson could have made one hell of a banger for Sting, I imagine. So there's that. I mean, so you can do the math in your head with whichever you want to do. Let's go with the Jim Johnson. I'm fine with that. Sting comes down to the ring and looks at Vince and says, I've been dismantling you for years from afar. I've been dominating those big boys, and I'm tired of playing with big boys. It's time for me to see what the Federation's all about. It's time for me to get you face to face, Vince, and hold you accountable for your heinous actions you've done. I am here, and I'm going to show you why I was nothing more than the franchise, and I will now be the man here in the WWF. Now, of course, Vince is going to try to say you'll never get a shot at the title, all this, but The Rock is The Rock. And he's going to say, I don't know who the hell you think you are, which Sting's going to shut him down real quick and say, yeah, you know exactly who I am. I've been against many before, and I don't mind being against many again. The Rock's going to say, if you want to go one-on-one with the great one at The Rock's pay-per-view, then you got it for the WWF Championship. It is then announced on WWF.com, that was a thing, people, back the next day, that it would be none other than Sting challenging WWF champion The Rock for the title at Rock Bottom. Going into Rock Bottom, Sting versus WWF champion The Rock. Now, we would have a great matchup here with Mr. McMahon attempting to, help The Rock out. However, it wouldn't work out. Sting hits the Scorpion Death Drop, gets the 1, 2, 3 for Fink to hit, and new WWF champion, Sting! Could you imagine the Fink hitting that right there? I'm going to be honest. Gets me my feels. Now, the next night on Raw, Sting would come down to the ring as the WWF champion. How cool could that have been? He's going to take a jab at Hogan at this point and say, hey, Hulkster, I guess I was tan enough to get the job done last night, brother. Then we get the crashing sound, those cars colliding, and Mankind comes down to the ring. Mankind wants to challenge Sting for the WWF Championship right here on Raw tonight. Sting looks at him and tells him, Cactus, it won't be the first time I've made you tap. You're on. You got it. Sting versus Mankind in the main event. Both men look great. We know what kind of matchup they could have had because they had several bangers inside of WCW. Ultimately, Rock and Vince interfere for a DQ finish. A triple threat is then announced with Sting versus The Rock and Mankind at the Royal Rumble. Now, at the Royal Rumble 1999, as we enter the 99 year, Sting would retain in a triple threat match by making Mankind tap out to the Scorpion after Mankind had already hit a DDT on The Rock through the table. Vince, however, he still wins this Royal Rumble, screwing Stone Cold out of his victory. Now on Raw the next night, it would open to the Ministry of Darkness coming down to the ring, with Paul Bearer calling out Sting, demanding a WWF title shot. Sting comes out and tells Taker, wow, you're really mean. I kind of knew a guy like you. Went by the name of Mark. I pinned him too. Heard him when he went off because of some booker that didn't know what the hell he had, and he really made a name for himself. Sold a few tickets even. You know what, Marky Mark, you got it. You can have a title match, and I'll beat you again. Now, this rivalry will get really heated. Now, these two, I could just see. This is the dream match we all wanted, people. Sting versus The Undertaker. Not Sting versus Mean Mark. Sting versus The Undertaker. This is what we wanted. So this match, this just gets heated going into St. Valentine's Day Massacre. At the pay-per-view, Sting fights from underneath for 80% of this matchup right here. Sting mounts a comeback when Paul Bearer goes to hit him with the urn. Sting ducks. Paul Bearer accidentally hits The Undertaker with the urn for Sting to get a schoolboy finish on The Undertaker for the 1, 2, 3, and the retention. Now, on that same night, Steve Austin will win a steel cage match, becoming the new #1 contender versus Vince McMahon when the Giant debuts as The Big Show and throws him through the cage, allowing Austin to get the win. Now, the build for WrestleMania would begin with Steve Austin versus none other than WWF champion Sting. Now, we would get some epic promos out of these two each week. Sting even hits Austin with the, "Wow, Steve, you had a lot more hair last time I saw you. Are you still stunning?" And at this point, you know that would set the ire of Steve Austin. "You damn right, son. If you want some, I'll show you, you son of a bitch." At WrestleMania, we'll get Stone Cold Steve Austin versus WWF champion Sting. Now, these two would have a hell of a match, and that crowd will be white hot when that glass shatters for Steve to come out through the ring. But they're going to be hot for both men. Steve Austin goes for the stunner at one point when Sting counters and hits a Scorpion death drop. However, Paul Bearer pulls the ref out of the ring. When out from under the other side of the ring comes The Undertaker, who hits a tombstone pile driver on Sting, pulling Steve Austin over the top of him, allowing Steve Austin to get the 1, 2, 3, and new WWF champion, Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania. Now, the next night on Raw, we would open up with Sting and The Undertaker brawling backstage. And these two are just at one another. And it is announced that at Backlash, it will be none other than Sting versus The Undertaker inside of the Hell in a Cell. At the Backlash, we get a Muta scale level bloodbath out of these two right here. These two men would have one hell of a battle, and it would go back and forth. Sting pulling out all the stops, as does Ministry of Darkness Taker. However, Sting would get the win on The Undertaker. Now, it may over the edge. Now, this pay-per-view has been marred over time due to the tragic accident of Owen Hart. Now, in our universe, Owen plummeted to his doom, unfortunately, and we lost a truly great talent way, way too soon. But in this universe, that's not going to happen. Not only because I can rewrite it how I want it, people, but it just doesn't make sense for him to become the Blue Blazer, still be dropping out of the ceiling when Sting's doing that. Now, Sting had been seasoned and doing that for some time, so maybe when Sting does his repels occasionally here and there, he's going to know what to look for, where Owen was rather untrained in this, unfortunately. But he has no reason to be dropping out of the ceiling because, hey, Sting's already doing this. You can't have two people doing the same gimmick, people. So guess what? We get to keep Owen Hart, and he still keeps the kick ass inside of the WWF. But for the WWF Championship, we get none other than Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Undertaker versus Sting. Now, we're going to give The Undertaker a little love here. The Undertaker's going to get the win and the WWF Championship on this night with a little help of the corporate ministry. That's right, people. We brought in the corporate ministry. Now, as we go into June, Raw kicks off the King of the Ring tournament, where Sting will win a qualifying matchup against the former King of the Ring, Ken Shamrock. Now, Sting will go on to win the King of the Ring that year with wins over the Big Boss Man, Owen Hart. Hey, see what we did there? And badass Billy Gunn. Let's face it, people. If we hadn't done this, Billy Gunn goes on to win the King of the Ring, and this is just the downfall of where the King of the Ring starts, where duds start winning after that, and you just don't get a lot out of it. So, King Sting has arrived. Now, the next night, Raw kicks off with King Sting, where he's going to declare that he's ready to get his title back. He's sit on the back burner for far too long, and he's ready to regain the WWF Championship. When out comes the game, Triple H. Yeah. Triple H is going to come down and say, I want a shot at it. So I challenge you for a match. Not only any match, a strap match for the number one contendership. So in your house, fully loaded, we get Sting versus Triple H in a strap match for the number one contender. Now, Sting is no stranger to a strap match. He has had several really good strap matches. There's one in particular with him and Vader that is just really good. YouTube them shits, people. You will not be disappointed, I promise. So, Triple H and Sting would have some really great in-ring chemistry with great ring psychology as well. Vince comes down there to screw Sting over, but guess who makes the save? Mankind tells Vince to have a nice day, puts the mandible claw on him. Sting goes on to get the win and become the number one contender. It is announced on Raw that at SummerSlam, none other than Sting versus WWF Champion Stone Cold Steve Austin for the title at SummerSlam in Sting versus Austin 2. With, guess what, people? Jesse the Body Ventura as a special guest referee. We have a great bill for SummerSlam with Austin actually showing Sting some moderate level of respect that was very unbecoming of Stone Cold going into this matchup. At SummerSlam, roof blows off the place. Austin gets a Road Warrior pop beyond belief. Sting comes out, gets a great pop, and this match is 100 miles an hour, back and forth. Ross and the King will be magic selling this right here, especially with the Body involved. Man, this would have been golden. The Body actually gets in Austin's face at one point when Austin tries to use the ring announcer, the timekeeper's bell, so to speak, but he gets in the way. Sting then would get the Scorpion Death Drop on Austin, getting the 1, 2, 3, and new WWF Champion 2 times, Sting. Now on the premiere edition of SmackDown, that's right, people, SmackDown debuted that very month in 1999. So on the premiere edition, we're going to get none other than WWF Champion Sting defending his title against a returning British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, with none other than HBK as a special guest referee. Now, we get a tease several times during this match of Sting versus Shawn, because you can just imagine they've never touched before. They could have really had something going there. But ultimately, Sting pulls out the win with the Scorpion Deathlock. On Raw the next week, it is announced that at Unforgiven, we get a 6-pack challenge, with Sting defending his title against Triple H, The Rock, British Bulldog, Big Show, Kane, with Stone Cold Steve Austin as your special ring enforcer. Going into Unforgiven, Bulldog does the unthinkable and wins the 6-pack challenge when Steve Austin stuns Triple H, setting him up, rolling into the British Bulldog's running power slam and the 1, 2, 3. Now, the next night on Raw, Sting gets a rematch against the WWF champion. However, Owen Hart would come down and interfere, helping Davey retain the title. And guess who makes the save? None other than The Rock. We hit his music and if you smell what The Rock is cooking, comes down to the ring to help make the save. On SmackDown, it is Sting and The Rock versus the former tag team champions, Davey and Owen. Now, Rock will pin Davey at one point, setting up The Rock being the new number one contender at the next pay-per-view. At No Mercy, The Rock would win the WWF Championship from the British Bulldog. Sting and Owen, however, would have a barn burner that night. Them two right there would throw a wrestling clinic on, having a really great matchup. But Sting would ultimately get the win with the Scorpion Deathlock. Scorpion versus the Sharpshooter. Now we get a typical bill for Survivor Series. Let's face it, a lot of times, if you got pushed into the 4-on-4 matchups, they were kind of throwaways, so to speak. So unfortunately, that's just the nature of where we're at right here. So Sting, Kane, and the Hardy Boys will go on to face the former tag team champions, Davey and Owen, and the Dudley Boys. Get up, get up, get up. At the Survivor Series, the Hardys will get eliminated early in the match. Sting and Kane will fight valiantly, eliminating the Dudleys, who would then turn around and hit a 3D on Kane before exiting the ring, allowing Kane to be pinned, leaving Sting versus Davey and Owen. Now, Sting would just be fighting from underneath for much of this right here, with Davey and Owen playing with their food more often than not. However, Sting would then get a roll-up victory over Owen, bringing it back down to him and Davey once again. And in this timeline, after a good lengthy battle back and forth, Sting would avenge his title loss against Davey Boy Smith, getting the 1-2-3 after a Scorpion Death Drop and becoming the sole survivor. Now, this would wrap up Sting's first year inside of the WWF. Now, let's be honest, people. Sting was loyal, just like we talked about earlier in the show. So Sting is one that I feel like he would have stayed with the WWF at this point. He would not have went back to WCW. He'd have stayed there, and we'd have got some really great matchups in the night, going into 2000. And in 2000, a lot of things really opened up. I mean, Austin went out hurt at the Survivor Series and didn't come back to the next year's Survivor Series. The Undertaker gets hurt, and he doesn't come back until Unforgiven the next year, when he comes back as the Badass, which sets up a whole new feud with Badass Taker versus Sting. Would Sting reinvent himself a little bit? Would he at some point go back to a surfer-type character just to have that color to him inside the WWF? What if? What if? How would we have Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, all these guys, Eddie Guerrero, that were up and coming in the next year, in the year 2000, versus Sting, a veteran like Sting? They could have had some really great matchups, really great feuds. Drop me some comments below. Let me know what you think. Let me know who you think he would have kind of went on to. How would his 2000 have played out? Would he have stayed? Do you feel like he would have went back to WCW and went down with the sinking ship? Because, I mean, remember, at the end of the day, the card is always subject to change.